I kind of wanted to start off with, I've seen you speak previously about a book that you read called The Art of Being, and you referenced a particular line where it said, "Tell me what wakes up and I'll tell you who you are." The idea being that when you find this thing that brings you fulfillment, you feel awoken. When was the first moment that occurred to you with music?
That's a good question. I think for me personally, maybe there was a couple, like, obviously when you're a kid, hearing music for the first time is kind of mind-blowing. So yeah, there's definitely some memories back then, like my parents showing me, or my dad showing me like Dean Martin and Roy Orbison and Johnny Cash and that kind of stuff. But I think maybe they like increased in magnitude for us, and like, I don't know, maybe some of those Spill shows is when we're hit the hardest with that awakening. We used to play this little venue in Peterborough, Ontario called The Spill, and that was kind of like, it was like this little cafe with a tiny stage in the corner and pretty bad PA system, but they would just let anyone play. And I think that it was probably one of those shows there where we first like had people come out and sing along to our songs, and we like didn't fully know them. They were like vague friends that we had just kind of met through music. That might have been like one of the most intense examples of that, is feeling very, very alive and realizing like, whoa, this like music is a portal to this higher level.
Yeah. How does that impact your drive?
Definitely.
When you have those experiences, yeah.
Yeah, I think that, like I said, like it increased in magnitude, and each time it's so much more indulgent and addicting. And like, I think for both of us, we found a lot of purpose in making music. Yeah, it's just kind of become like who we are.
Was it the same for you, Ian? Was it a similar moment?
Yeah, I think we, over the last few years have shared quite a few moments simultaneously without even necessarily having talked about it after, which is kind of cool. But yeah, like Luke said, it kind of, the moments like that really make something as, I don't know, because to me, music's always been important, but it's hard to see it as more than a hobby sometimes, just because of...
Do you think those moments kind of knock those perceptions down a little bit though?
Yeah, no, totally. Like you're kind of, it's like a curtain being open to this much bigger world that music can bring you. And yeah, I think there are a lot of small, big moments, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. If we look back to the people you were when you're kind of leaving high school, and or kind of even when you're in high school, and you have this ambition to be professional musicians and be in a band, and then let's say we look to the person maybe 3 years before now, when you first started to see a real traction and success with this project, and that was kind of beginning to take off. What growth would you say kind of occurred in that interim from your high school self and with the ambition to it actually starting to happen? What changed in you as a person in that meantime?
I think something Ian and I talk about pretty often is like this kind of happy, like ignorance or like naive thing that we used to have. And well, I think we still have, but just because we grew up where we did, and there was never a music scene here or like an original music scene here, or like bands or role models from here to kind of learn from. We went into things really blind, and over those like initial 3 years of Cleopatrick, it was always surprising like how it's almost hard to put it into words because it just sounds so stupid, but like I don't think we realized that we could be a real band. It seemed like there needed to be someone that like gives you permission or like unlocks the door for you or something. So we were just like trudging along, playing shows and having fun, and slowly, bit by bit, like things became more real. And with each one of those things, it was like we learned a little bit more about ourselves, and we became more of a unique band, like in songwriting and just our branding, our message, like everything we were going for. We were just kind of learning as we went. And at some point in the last 3 years recently, I think we realized like, oh shit, we're a real band now, whatever that means.
It's interesting that idea you were talking about there, where you almost felt like, there was almost like a gatekeeper and someone needed to say that you were a real band. when you start communicating with someone like Allison Hagendorf, who's head of Rock at Spotify, and you're emailing back and forth and she's adding your stuff onto playlists, did that kind of help in any way? Did that feel like that, what you had in your mind previously?
A little bit. That was definitely like out of this world exciting and legitimizing. But I think even still, like, I know I personally have this ever nagging imposter syndrome, and I would probably blame it on Coburg and just the fact that we didn't really have a scene to belong to, and we just feel like the underdogs, and I think we'll probably feel like that for a lot longer. I don't know. I've come to terms with it, and people like Ali or the team that we've been able to build around us, they've definitely helped us feel more in control and less like we need someone's permission to be up there.
There have been a lot of people like that who have enabled us. It's a much less of a gatekeeper situation, and rather, I mean, yeah, I guess just enablers, like people who have seen what we've done and have kind of either helped push us to gain a bit more exposure or just pushed us to continue doing what we're doing. So I feel like, to add on to what Luke was saying, you know, it never ended up being one person who was like, okay, you're a real life band. It was a series of events and people that we were able to do cool stuff with, and people who we're still able to do cool stuff with, that kind of, and it allowed us to kind of open our eyes and be like, oh, well, you know, it's kind of, this is still our thing, but it can be bigger than just two people playing music in a basement, which is still exactly what it is, literally playing in Luke's parents' basement. Yeah, there's just been a lot of help and signs along the way that have kind of allowed us to feel a bit more like this is a thing that is attainable for us.
I love that idea of you still playing in Luke's basement.
Yeah.
Does that preserve something for you? You're still doing that to this day?
I mean, I think I like to think so. It's literally where I've played 90% of the music in my life, like, other than at home. Like, we had a high school band where we jammed almost exclusively in Luke's basement, you know, ever since the beginning of this. Like, we've been jamming in Luke's basement since day one, really. And it's kind of, yeah, it's special, and it kind of is a reminder, I guess.
Symbolic.
It's symbolic of where we're at and what we believe we're capable of, even with, you know, our circumstance. It's cool.
I wanted to come back to that idea we spoke about of feeling like you're a real band. Has your perception and your idea of what a real band is changed with time as you've become what you would classify as that?
Yeah, definitely. I think that I've come to realize that for 90% of bands, this is exactly how it starts. You're just going at it in whatever way you think works. Maybe you're just having fun, and then a series of events unfold, and suddenly you find yourself in the position of a real band. And I don't really know when you cross that line. I don't know when we cross that line, or if maybe there's another line to cross. But yeah, like I guess I'm kind of comforted by the fact that probably all my favorite bands felt this way in the beginning. A little bit of insecurity and a lot of ambition.
Does it give you a different form of connection to them? You know, you've connected with their music previously, you know, when you're growing up, and now that you're realizing that they were in the same position as you, does it kind of deepen that connection to them in any way and their music?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's comforting, especially like on a songwriting basis, because I feel like I'm just getting started as a songwriter, and that's probably where like the most of my insecurity lies. But then you read stories about people like Tom York or whoever feeling these same things in the early days, or at least describing what I think is the same thing. And yeah, I find a lot of comfort in that.
Yeah, I feel like it's important to remember that Tom York wrote a bad song at one point. Like, he seems very unattainable now, but there was a point in his life when Tom York was writing bad songs.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea.
You know, what we were saying there about this idea of feeling like you're a real band, you've spoken as well with this record about how it's been a process of finding a voice that you didn't realize you had. Is there a connection there between the two and the realization of both? Did it happen at a similar time? Was there a crossover, or did one lead to the other?
Yeah, like from my perspective, lyrically, I was just trying to write about stuff that felt good to me. It felt good to like yell to a crowd. A lot of the touring we've done so far has just been based off the Boys EP. And a lot of those songs are pretty personal, kind of like layered in with some fake narration and some metaphors to hide behind to kind of cover up the vulnerability. But like early on in touring, like these were our first tours ever, really, like going through the States for the first time. There's a handful of kids that we met that we got to spend some time with, and they told us about how the lyrics resonated with them and how they related to the things we built these songs around. And that was definitely a big discovery for me, like realizing that even though these songs felt so specifically about my life, that they're far more broad than that. And there's a lot of responsibility that came with that. And it feels kind of noble now, like writing this whole record. It was awesome to have that in the back of my mind, that like there's going to be people out there that feel this stuff too, no matter how specific. Yeah, it kind of feels like it's for myself and them. And that's kind of that voice that I think we're referencing in that quote. Is I kind of felt like these songs were talking to myself, but they actually turned out that I'm talking to a handful of people, and that feels really good.
Yeah. I mean, you've kind of spoken about that as well in terms of they're carefully constructed to, galvanize mosh pits and get crowds going. At what point did that idea start to enter your mind, and the idea of structuring songs so that they could achieve a kind of designed response?
Yeah, well, I think like Ian and I have always been attracted to like having a dope looking show. And that also came a little bit from those early Spill Cafe shows. Like some of our first mosh pits happened there, and it was something that Ian and I were not familiar with, but it felt amazing. And I've held on to that, especially when we've been writing this new record. Like there's been a lot of focus on that because it feels like fun songs with that kind of physical energy to them can act as a really awesome like Trojan horse for a bigger message. And I think that that's part of what makes our band unique. That's kind of like our formula, is that our songs are really fun and you can just go out and hang with your friends and jump around to them. But at any moment you could kind of tune into the words and maybe feel a little something. Like it kind of covers two bases there. And I really like that. And I think that designing our songs with that in mind really made this record fucking awesome.
I love that Trojan horse idea. That's a great analogy.
Yeah, thank you.
What about you, Ian? How does that impact your approach, once you come to that realization?
Yeah, I mean, the amount of conversations that Luke and I have had about this exact thing, I mean, other than what Luke just said, it's kind of hard to pinpoint one area of that for me.
Is it different performing live at all? Like, once you get to a point where you're kind of getting better at structuring the songs to achieve an impact, does that then affect it when you're playing them live on stage?
Yeah, I mean, when there's been the thought put into it, and you see it in front of your eyes kind of work out, and you see people like looking at us and really feeling it, and like without even having played really any of these new songs live that much, like just even with the old tracks, I don't know, it adds a whole extra layer. It's not just a crowd going crazy. It's a crowd of people who feel things and are feeling things with you. It really, I don't know, it really adds to that aspect of the live show being more and more fulfilling as time goes on.
Well, will you write in the live room together? Is that where the songs start to take shape?
Yeah, like a lot of the ideas come like separately and are kind of shells of what the songs end up being until we work them out with that kind of live energy in mind. Or even like a lot at shows. There's a handful of songs on this new record that we kind of took on tour with us and played and adjusted each night because I don't know, there's like a subconscious kind of songwriting when it comes to like the live show. Stuff that you can't really calculate or quantify when you're just sitting in a basement, no matter how hard you try. Sometimes you just need the pressure or the energy of like a room full of people in front of you to tell you how long to hold a certain part or whatever it might be.
I heard, was it the demo for the Drake you put up on your SoundCloud?
Maybe Good Grief?
No, yeah, you're right. Yeah, it would have been Good Grief. Is that what it kind of ties into what you were saying there about the early stages? It's kind of the shell of the final song. Is that the demo you take into the studio with you to work on when you're going in to work on the record?
Yeah, that is what we did this time. I mean, we're still figuring out, like, we don't really have a formula, so I can't say that this is like just how we do it, but that is what happened with that song. It's like, there's that really funny soulless demo that we made in quarantine. Like I wrote that song and sent the arrangement to Ian, and he added those drums and we adjusted some parts without ever like being together in person. And then, that's what we brought to the studio with us to record. Yeah. So that one, like, you can really hear how synthetic, and I mean, obviously it's a pretty shitty demo in general, but
you can see the spark.
You can hear it's missing. Yeah. It has the foundation. Totally.
Do you have that in your mind when you hear that demo? Do you immediately begin to kind of see where you could take this? Yeah,
definitely. There's just so much that just happens naturally. Like, I think Ian and I are pretty good at not overthinking when it comes to recording or performing. Kind of just let stuff happen and trust that whatever feels natural is what's right. But that's not to say that we haven't hyperanalyzed some stuff to the point of ruining a song. But yeah, definitely.
Because we have.
How do you prevent yourselves overthinking then, if you do have a kind of tendency to overanalyze a little bit?
I mean, I think there's a lot of trust in each other's opinions that we try to put forward. I mean, I don't know. It's really different with every track, I find.
Why don't we take Family Van then, for example? Like on that track, the recent single.
Yeah, that one was interesting. Like it came from like a little jam Ian and I had actually in Ian's basement. Credit to Ian's basement. I played this riff and Ian played like a couple different drum parts over it, and then we just packed up and like didn't really think too much of it. I just had it on my laptop and I felt this spark and I wanted to like make it into a song, but I only had this tiny little jammed section. So I put it into GarageBand and chopped it up like a beat, like splitting different sections and trying to quantize things so it sounded not so shitty. Yeah, like a pretty full arrangement came out of that, and I wrote all the lyrics, and it kind of felt like a done song for a pretty long time until we were taking some meetings. We were in New York, like playing some of the demos for some people, and there was this one meeting where we played Family Van. Maybe it was like the third meeting that day, like third time hearing this Family Van demo, and we played it and it wrapped up. And at the time, the song was like much shorter. It didn't have the whole outro section in it. But we played it in this meeting and kind of like it finished and everyone was kind of chatting. And I was just sitting there and I suddenly began to completely overthink it in kind of a positive way. Like I just felt like, whoa, that song's really short. Like it's too dope to end so fast. And then like there was some reworking and we built this whole outro section purely based on like some critical thinking and some bouncing of ideas. So yeah, like sometimes it's natural and sometimes it's positive. And I think with Family Van, there was like a good amount of just like, it just came out and it felt right. And then later on, some overthinking that I think improved the song quite a bit.
Is that a different thing? It's interesting, what you're saying there about the outro, how you were writing it very much with the rest of the song in mind. Is it a different thing writing off the back of reacting to something like that as opposed to just writing from scratch? When you know the purpose it's going to serve in the context of the entire song instead of just coming up with ideas at the get-go?
Yeah, I think probably for both of us, if we're like adjusting an idea that's already kind of formed, it flows almost most naturally. Yeah, because then you kind of have like you have the thing in front of you. You can kind of picture it and see the edges, and
it feels like there's something, a much clearer thing to be working towards rather than just this unknown. void of an idea. You know what I mean? That's how I see it, at least.
It's like coloring in. The lines are there. You kind of just
Yeah.
gotta fill them in how you want.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or adding a tail onto like a drawing that maybe the creature doesn't have a tail. It's like, you know what? This could use a tail. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When does the idea for the game come into the picture?
Yeah, that was kind of a result of COVID. Like we've just been trying to do like cool things around these songs, because I mean, what the real plan would have been is to be touring and playing shows like on every release night, and like, I don't know, like making a more classic, or taking a more classic approach to it. But being at home and knowing that all our fans are at home, like we had to kind of pivot and find ways to engage people and make them feel like, or just prove to them that they're part of the team, without actually being there in person and like saying it to their face. Yeah, so the game came from our kind of newly grown team that's working on this record with us. This idea got thrown around to make a video game, and pretty much immediately Ian and I were like, yo, that would be nuts. I don't think it was something that we really considered, or ever, like it never crossed our mind that we could make a video game. But yeah, we were instantly so excited about it. And yeah, it just kind of grew. Like we just basically put our wildest ideas into a Google Doc and made what we could happen and scrapped the rest.
Did you make the music for it? The kind of 8-bit stuff that's going on?
Yeah. I made a couple of the sounds and like the 8-bit family van that kind of like rocks in the background.
And I love how you've got like the city skyline, which I think, does it have the CN Tower in it?
Yeah.
In the background, yeah. So it's Toronto, is that your nearest city?
It is.
Is that your kind of hometown
show? It's kind of a tribute to like the commute that we used to make all the time, finishing work, like our jobs here in Coburg at like 4 p.m. and then running home and putting on some kind of cool clothes and hopping in Ian's van and driving to Toronto to make it for load in. It's an age-old story for us.
On the 401.
On the 401.
Because you reference that on the Drake, don't you? Last verse, outro, I'm trying to think.
Yeah, that's actually, it's tribute to the same commute. It basically is directions on how to get home.
That song's an interesting one because you have this narrative there where you kind of have the first verse setting up the scene, but then throughout it, it's almost like, well, when you look at it lyrically, it's like you're flashing back to other periods in your life. Is that kind of a reflection of what that night that formed that song was like for you, or the night that experience is based upon, rather?
Yeah, definitely. It was like something kind of trivial and like just like a crappy situation that suddenly turned spiritual and like more upsetting on a cosmic scale. And so the song kind of reflects that. It's like it zeroes in and then it just opens up into this void of emotion. Has
your relationship to that night changed after creating a song about it?
Oh yeah, that gave us closure. Yeah, and like that song's sick and we both love playing it so much, so it's cool. Like I think anytime you can get a dope song out of a bad experience, it's pretty awesome.
Were you aware that was going to be a bad experience when you were in the middle of it? Because with the kind of setup of the narrative of that, it feels like it could go one of two ways. Like it feels like it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, maybe.
Yeah, I think it was like fight or flight. That's kind of what I felt that night. I didn't know what to think.
Yeah, pretty immediately it at least felt like one of the more uncomfortable situations I've ever been in personally, at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, so what kind of happens is you're playing, is it your first hometown headline show?
It was like we'd played Toronto a handful of times, but it was like the first one after like our song Hometown had been like in some Spotify playlists. So there was like real internet fans coming out to see us, or a handful of them. And it was our first time performing for our brand new agent, and we wanted to impress him, and all this stuff kind of compounded.
And then some people that you used to go to school with show up that you weren't expecting or wouldn't have been expecting. Yeah,
kind of like the archetype of the boys, like the kind of the boys that we wrote the EP about roll up, and eventually, like, to make a long story short, there's like a fight that ends up breaking out in the mosh pit. So ironically, like this is where it reaches that cosmic scale. Is like we were playing Hometown, which is a song about, you know, the anxiety of a hometown and the characters and the masculinity of a hometown being something I want to avoid. And as this fight's breaking out, I'm singing the second verse where I say, somehow they make it to all of my shows, and where can I go? And I'm watching that exact situation unfold in front of me. And it was just shockingly, I don't even know what word to use.
Has life ever imitated art for you in such a direct way like that at any other time?
I think I have my eyes open for these kinds of things. Because I'm kind of into that. Like I'm into the idea of manifestation and I don't know, just good vibes. And I like to look out for a good story when one's unfolding. I don't think I can narrow down to one right now, but there's been many times where I've been like, whoa, that would be in a book.
It's interesting you're kind of speaking about that archetypal figure that you're talking about in that EP, and then shows up to the show this kind of embodiment of toxic masculinity, which is something that the genre of rock, something that you are re-energizing, has a history with and kind of has associations with in its past. How do you kind of view that, and how do you deal with those connotations that the genre has?
I think for us, it's a pretty musical approach. It's that Trojan horse thing. Like our rock and masculinity are kind of synonymous. We both think that sucks. Our kind of like answer to that is to write these rock songs that kind of like musically, I think they probably attract the masculine type, but lyrically it has that Trojan horse of like not being about that at all. In fact, often just critiquing it. And that feels to me like a good start for making our shows like a space where anyone feels like they can come, is lyrically like it's clearly open for anyone that's actually listening.
You seem to, you kind of emulate that as well in the stuff surrounding it. Like if you look at your tour diaries and stuff, they're carrying on that message.
Yeah, I think we've always made a conscious effort to just let ourselves be ourselves and be dorky and not try and present ourselves as being cool. Because maybe that's where it gets easy to cross that line and suddenly you're being a douchebag.
We're kind of touching upon the video content surrounding it as well. I'm intrigued by, where do you draw the line between art and the content surrounding it? Because a lot of the stuff you put out, whether it be, we're talking about the video game, the videos, the zines, they all feel very tied to the project and like a natural extension of it. Do you view them as part of the art, or are they kind of content, or where do you draw that line?
Well, I think a very big part of the art is the community, and we've been very blessed to make a lot of amazing friends, and there's been this community that's really built itself alongside of our music and our friends' music and everything that's tied with the NRM. It really all feels like it's a part of one thing. So yeah, like the videos and the zines and the things that we do that are a bit more for fun. Not that the music part of it isn't fun, but it's definitely the center point. I think everything else, I like to think it all falls under the same category, I guess. But in another sense, it's, I don't know, maybe it's more of just a space for us to show our more lighthearted artistic sides.
Yeah. I mean, you've got the tattoos and stuff in there as well when it comes to the zines.
Yeah. Like that, those are like I feel like everything that I've drawn for that, those are like pretty goofy and average, but like people seem to love them, and that's like that feels like art to me. Like if it feels good to draw those things, and then the occasional person actually gets them tattooed on themselves because it means something to them. It's like it's pretty special. It's cool.
It comes down to connecting with people, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally. Like, and that connection doesn't always have to be so serious. It can be fun, and it can be lighthearted, and I don't know, art comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes and interactions and moments. So it's hard for me to really categorize it too much, I guess.
I mean, as the artist, does the connection feel different when you see people moshing to your songs, or you see people getting something that you've drawn tattooed on them? Is that a different thing, or is it the same feeling of connection?
I don't know. The music can feel a bit more based on the moment, I think. And it's, you're kind of in it together. And like, I don't know, sometimes things like the tattoos and whatnot can I think it can catch Luke and I off guard. Like, it's amazing and it blows us away, but it's almost like a bit harder to grasp. It's like, it could, because it's so like, it means so much that it's hard to even like articulate how that makes us feel when the music and playing shows it kind of just comes, it's just already the full package just being laid out in front of you. You know what I mean? It's just, I don't know, it can be overwhelming sometimes in the best way possible, if that makes sense.
Is it because the tattoo is so permanent as well, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, like, whether it's a tattoo or someone coming up to us telling us about how much, they relate to a song like The Depths and how they spent so much time in similar situations growing up and in high school. It, like, I don't know, it's just more in general, I think my mind goes to how many people this music has reached, even people that we haven't met. Like, it really just, it's almost hard to wrap my head around. I don't know, it's truly amazing.
Can you remember the first time that someone approached you and told you that they truly connected with your music and that it affected them in a profound way?
Yeah, like, I think that happened a couple times in like the early days, but it was like our friends kind of. And when it's your friends, I don't know, like, maybe we thought that they're just being nice or just being friends, right? Like, it didn't quite hit the same until I think we were out on the road and meeting like completely random people. But yeah, I definitely do remember like suddenly realizing that there was this honor and this responsibility that between like us and our listeners, being maybe a little bit afraid of it, but mostly just grateful.
You need a little bit of fear.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you don't fear that kind of thing, you might be a sociopath.
Do you ever think about those moments when you're in the studio? Those moments where you connect with your fans?
Not before, but on this new record, a lot. Definitely a lot. There's certain songs that like I just can't wait to come out because there's a specific person in a specific city that I know is like gonna love it. I think that's pretty cool. It feels very communal. It's changed songwriting for me because it feels like it's not just for me anymore, which is, I don't know, I can't find a better word to describe it than cool, but it's something.
Was that idea something that came to mind when you were constructing 2008 in the studio?
Yeah, a bit. I think actually, as far as the album goes, that one might have been like the most for me than all the other songs. That one's probably the one where that happened the least. I thought about others the least.
It is very intimate, almost haunting at points in.
Yeah, I'm really proud of that song, and it's definitely a special moment. Actually, those last three songs are a really special moment on this record.
Where did 2008 emerge in the writing chronology of the songs on the album? At what point did it come to you?
This is the last song I wrote.
Wow.
Yeah, but I'd been trying to write it for a long time. It's kind of weird, but I kind of name my songs before I even write them, and so there's that name for a long time. I'm sure there's like probably 6 different versions of it in Ian and I's text conversation. But it wasn't until like right near the end where I guess maybe having kind of a bigger batch of songs helped inform the aesthetic and like the approach that this concept for 2008 should have taken. And also like I collaborated with our producer Jig Dube on it. And that was kind of one of the first times I like really wrote a song with someone other than Ian. That was cool too. Like it was just like a different perspective all of a sudden that unlocked a different thing. And yeah, it helped finish that song. Like I truly felt like that song wasn't going to get done in time to record, but then it happened. And yeah, I've been really excited about it ever since.
What did Jig bring to that allowed you to complete it?
I think I had a version that it was not as vulnerable. It was hiding behind some ego and it was trying to be kind of cool. I sent it to Jig and he sent back this like the same thing but completely different, just so much more vulnerable with like most of the melodies like kind of laid out in the way they are on the record. Yeah, it was just like this loose, much more gentle idea that maybe I was too scared to even approach. But yeah, that kind of like, I don't know. Sorry, this is my first time ever talking about this actually.
I wonder, could you have written this? Do you think you only could have written the song at this point into your writing progression almost? Do you think you couldn't have written this song like 3 years ago? It feels like maybe.
No, I don't think so. I think that this song is exciting for me because it feels like kind of a new step for me as a songwriter and for this band and like what we feel confident doing on record. Yeah, it's cool. It's special.
When you have the title, how much of the song do you have in your mind? Do you know what you want to write about?
Yeah, like usually I'll write with a title and like one good little lyric or like piece of poetry. And I'll like hold on to that and try it out on like every song idea Eden and I have, see if the lyrics kind of fit or the vibe fits. And if it doesn't, I'll try out a different one. Yeah, that's kind of how it works. There's like a title and like a line and a basic theme, but not much else other than that. And I wait for the right thing, like the right musical idea to support the emotions or whatever themes or the lyric that I have is exploring. And then once those two things click, it's like pretty immediately, it feels like the door opens up and I can go in and write out all the lyrics and arrange, and it just kind of comes.
So will it just come out as a stream of consciousness and then you arrange afterwards?
Sometimes. Again, like pretty much every song we've written is out. And so like we're really new to songwriting, and I find I hit walls pretty often, and like maybe lyrically I'm able to convey what I want. The melody is really important to me, and if I don't have the melody, I can't quite get the words out, or the rhymes don't kind of fit properly, and that can kind of derail the whole stream of consciousness thing. But sometimes the stars align and it just comes out.
You're saying there as well that, pretty much every song you've written is out. Will you reject ideas before they become full songs?
Yeah.
Like, do you normally, if you see it through to the end, it's going to be good?
Yeah, and it might be unhealthy, but I don't know. I've just never been able to finish an idea that I don't like. It doesn't feel like it has the thing, and I don't even know what the thing is, but it's just an energy. But I'm cool with it. Like Ian and I are usually both on the same page. If something's not working, we'll just move on, and there's not really any shame in it, or we don't mourn those ideas.
How did you react when you heard 2008 for the first time, Ian?
Well, it was, like Luke was saying, it was kind of a long process. And I was actually just looking at all those voice notes the other day. There's literally 6 that are titled 2008 that do not all sound anywhere near each other. But yeah, it was a very critical moment. There was that other idea that was pretty well close to being done. And I remember thinking it was a really cool idea. And I was really excited about it. It was the little guitar part that I'd come up with, and then Luke had like really just taken that and made it this awesome thing. And then when he came to me with the newest version, it really like opened my eyes, and I thought like, wow, like, I don't know, you don't realize like what something's missing until something else is put in front of you. And I remember the second he sent me a clip of him playing this version, it really, it really opened my eyes and made me, it didn't open my eyes to a new level of critiquing things, but it made me see like, oh, there is potential there sometimes is potential beyond what is laid in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, it almost sounds like a similar thing to what Luke was saying, where when he gets the melody, he can suddenly write everything. It's like when you hear the correct version of the song, the version that feels right, it then all makes sense for you in the same way.
Yeah, like I remember feeling like it was ready to go, but obviously like there's a bit more to it than just a catchy melody sometimes. And I don't know, sometimes you just have to look a bit deeper than that.
We mentioned Jig a few minutes back as well. What's the story of your relationship with him? How long have you been working with him, and why was he the choice for this record? And was he always the choice for this record?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've only been friends with all those guys in Zig Mentality for a few years now, but we've gotten very close and bonded over quite almost everything that Luke and I have been bonding over for the last decade and a bit. You know what I mean? Like, they came into our lives in a pretty like weird and organic way, and we really hit it off and started doing cool stuff together. And they had actually, we were staying at their place after playing a show in Ottawa, which is where they live, and they had showed us new music that they had been working on, and it was just an obvious moment, I think, for both Luke and I, and we were really excited suddenly about the idea of working with Jig and just being in that environment with those guys. But yeah, we had worked with him once before, just kind of trying things out. We had actually recorded a different version of Family Van in this kind of cool, not quite as professional studio, but it was one of the most vibey, amazing studios we had ever been in. I think getting through that process and seeing how well our ideas and our beliefs really within rock music, how well they gelled with Jig, it really just, it made sense. And it kind of became a no-brainer to try to do the full record with him. And it's cool. It feels like there were plenty of options for this record laid out in front of us, and very appealing options too, to work with different producers and whatnot. But I mean, looking back now, like, this feels like the only way it could have happened. Like, it was really just the three of us in it, just kind of breaking rules where it felt necessary, and just nobody was really telling us that there was too much fuzz or the cymbals were too crashy and whatnot. It was really just us doing what felt right, to be as simple about it as possible. It really, so many moments added up to just feeling like the absolute perfect situation.
It's interesting. I like that phrase you used. Well, you used the phrase there, breaking rules. It's almost like you need that comfort and that trust in your producer to then go out with your comfort zone once you're in the studio and push things to the limit. Yeah,
totally. Like, Jig brings a lot more of the technical knowledge to the table. He's like obsessed with sonics, and he's just, when something excites him, he dives in and is really just fully immersed in it. And I think that was something that Luke and I really benefited from, because we both have our strengths, and it was really just like a trifecta, I think, of cool ideas and just pulling things off that we kind of thought were possible, but maybe weren't 100% sure about at one moment in time. And it really just came together beautifully.
Did you say as well that you worked on, was it an earlier version of Family Van with him?
Yeah, like we re-recorded a demo. I at the time we weren't sure if it was a demo or not, but we now consider it like the last demo we had done, I think in 2019, in the early winter of 2019. So that was really like, we wanted to try out working with him, and that was like one of the moments that really, I think, stuck with us, because we did essentially what we did with the record. We worked on it in studio and then brought it back to the basement and just kind of messed with it. We even had that version mixed by John Wayne, who mixed the whole record, and it just really felt like this amazing package that we were all very, very excited about. And we kind of took what we did in that early session and just maxed it out when we worked on the record.
What's the most important lesson that you've learned about yourselves that you can apply to your life through making music since that period, over the last few years, as you've kind of discovered your sound and gone on to do the things that you've done?
That's a crazy question. I think for me, not to sound corny, but like to just like believe in myself a little bit more. Like, I don't know, like just trusting that if I think something's cool, that there's a good chance there's like someone out there that also thinks it's cool. And that there's also a good chance that we can all get into a room together and both think it's cool together simultaneously while it happens. Yeah, I think I've just learned to like trust myself a bit more and believe in myself, for lack of a better idiom or whatever.
I don't know. That's a tough question for me. I feel like I've been learning many things about myself within the last 3 years. So it's hard for me to pinpoint one. I think.
Do you connect to what Luke said in a way? Do you kind of feel similarly? But this idea of kind of believing in yourself a little bit and having. Do you think you've got more conviction now than you did 2 years ago in your ideas?
Yeah,
your music?
I mean, I think so. Yeah, I like to think so. For me, like, I mean, on a similar level to Luke, like I don't write the music nearly as much as Luke does, but it's something I really am passionate about, and the small ideas that I've been able to translate, not just on the drums, but little ideas that have worked out to be on record, like little riffs or whatnot, that the idea that those can be on the same level as what I see things that Luke comes up with and shows me, like that's a huge confidence boost for me.